We are, as you know, doing. We've started our little pilot TV series, which was Clone Wars, and we are now going to move that into a 3D animation half-hour version, which will be a regular series. I'm going to get it started and hire the showrunners and all that sort of thing, but then I'm going to step away from it and go and do other things.
When George announced that the show was going to be happening, I think it was, 2005 back in Indianapolis, Celebration 3. And he said that he was going to kick off the show, get you on your feet, and then he was going to step back. Is George still as hands-on as he's ever been?
He was very hands-on in the beginning. I would see him more than once a week at times. I would have them done and direct them to a certain point until I thought they were ready. And then I would show them to him and say, what do you think of this? But once we established the look of the show, he did step back to a degree. But, you know, he will always be involved in the, he sees a story reel, which is like a very rough form of an episode. So he watches that, and then he gives me notes. He used to come in for those, and we would sit together and watch them. Now he just calls me.
And there have been times when we wanted to use things from the EU, and I was like, yeah, but we can't use it that way, so why? I don't want to use it and change it. You know, I don't want to use it and make it something completely different. That's rude. With the Holocron series, the trilogy about the Force-sensitive children, you know, when we began that, I'm not even sure, I can't remember, it's been so long, if we knew what the Holocron contained. We just knew the MacGuffin was the Holocron.
There's been all kinds of visualizations of holocrons throughout the years in other Star Wars media, but this was the first time you were going to see someone actually use a holocron on screen.
I wanted these little beams of light coming through. I ended up cutting that scene. You notice that the Gungan city is not underwater, because that saved us an incredible headache. I wanted to give the idea that the whole planet was under siege at one time. And I wanted the bottom edge of the fire to be very straight and flat, but I wanted the top to have this broken edge. This factory was an opportunity to do something I'd wanted to do. With one Padawan I liked was Barasafi. We had a good opportunity to have another girl, a little bit older than Ahsoka, but still a Padawan, and show those two try to work together to succeed in a mission. I wanted a scene on Geonosis where editing is everything in Star Wars. Jason Tucker is my right hand when it comes to that. He and I have been at the George Lucas School of Star Wars Filmmaking now for 4 years, so you know, I like to think we've learned a couple things.
And when George came in, he wanted to flip the shots entirely. So basically all the shots of the bridge were upside down to show that Anakin and Luminara are coming underneath the bridge, and we were going to destroy the bridge altogether. It's an amazing process, watching George work, you know, as we were cobbling all this together in the editing room.
Remember that scene in Return of the Jedi when Darth Vader comes to the Death Star at the very beginning? I'm kind of like the Darth Vader on the show, I will admit.
I'm here to put you back on schedule.
And the episodic director is kind of like Moff Jerjerrod.
I need more men.
And then George comes in, the Emperor comes in, completely destroyed our Death Star. What I wanted to do with the Sandstorm, the Sandstorm is an element of the story that was never in the original script. When I began editing the episode with Stuart Lee, there just wasn't a lot going on, and I said, you know, when they go off on these bikes here, I'd love to see this approaching sandstorm. You know, everyone's, oh my gosh, a sandstorm. What I wanted to see / hear was that I wouldn't do that episode if we didn't have that scene. Now we're going to get into a detail here. You know, there's the whole thing. Dave, is Eve Koss still alive? Because I thought he was on a gunship in Geonosis. I didn't see him die. I don't know. I looked up in the source books. I emailed Leland Chi. He sends me back a holocron.
From the script from episode 2, we thought he was killed.
I talked to Pablo. Everyone seemed sketchy on it.
Yeah, it says Eve Koss is among the fatalities included.
And George said we could kill him.
But so often inaccurate. Our intelligence is.
And I said, hey George, can Eve Koss be alive? Yeah. Okay, there's the answer. So Eve Koss is alive. Originally, Eve Koss died. I don't like that Eve Koss dies at the beginning of this episode. And I'll tell you why. Because too often we introduce a character in the Clone Wars and he's really cool,
Now go.
and then he dies. And you go, wow, that's a really cool character. I can't wait to do more with him. Oh, he's dead. We can't do anything more with him. We did this all the time in season 1. So I said, you know what? We're going to save Eve Koth. One helmeted bounty hunter that looked unbelievably cool has spawned an entire, mythology within this bigger mythology, an entire race of people. And it was said that they were Mandalorians, or they wore Mandalorian armor, and they were kind of this race of super commandos that were known for having fought against the Jedi Knights. Flash forward through the years, as the expanded universe began to take shape, there began to be many stories about Mandalorians. All these different stories. Fast forward to Attack the Clones. Oh my gosh, here comes the clones. There's a guy named Jango Fett. Suddenly, Boba Fett's a clone of this guy, Jango Fett. Well, Jango must be a Mandalorian. He must be, wow, this is our first look at that. We make all these assumptions, all these materials come out, all this stuff happens, all this stuff gets defined. Play Knights of the Old Republic, you see Mandalorians thousands of years in the past. All of this because of one helmeted bounty hunter. And then George Lucas tells me one day, we're gonna put the Mandalorians in the Clone Wars. And I go, oh boy. That's interesting. Because let me show you this. And I moved this big pile of material over and I said, this is everything. This is everything that the Mandalorians are right now. And so George and I do what we always do when we come across something that I know exists full well in the EU. We go over it all. Now, all the history of Mandalore that you knew prior to the Clone Wars, it does exist. It absolutely exists. Were they a mercenary people? Yes, they absolutely are. Did they fight against the Jedi? Yes, they absolutely did. Is there a big battle where there's a cataclysm between them and the Jedi? Yes. Have we pushed that idea that the cataclysm was so great that the surface of Mandalore was laid to waste? Absolutely we did. Because to George, the Mandalorians above all, dating back to Empire Strikes Back, are super commandos. They're a race of people that were a military. They can't be so vagabond as they've appeared in the EU. They can't be this group of people that are vastly different in paint job and paint scheme, because if you do that, they look too much immediately like a bunch of Boba Fetts. It robbed Boba Fett of his uniqueness. We needed a military. We needed an army. They have a very uniform look. They are trying to bring back the ancient Mandalorian ways of being the super commando and regain dominion for their mythology, their stories, with what you could call the EU is, that they are a warrior race and eventually mercenaries. The idea that Jango Fett is not a Mandalorian, that's something that comes directly from George. I think that when we first saw Jango in Attack the Clones, that a lot of us, myself included, we assumed, well, he must be a Mandalorian. There he is in Mandalorian armor. So there was kind of this early assumption that Jango must be a Mandalorian, and that was interesting to see. But that was never stated in the films. It's never stated that he's Mandalorian. He's always just referred to as a bounty hunter. So it was a real privilege, I think, for myself or my whole crew to be involved in the creation of one of these legendary planets for George. And he was very specific with me on so many things. And I'm always glad when he is, because at the end of the day, 10, 20 years from now, that's Mandalore. And when he looks at it, I want him to say, that's what I pictured, and I'm glad that fans now have the opportunity to see what he was thinking. And I look forward to seeing how what we've done for George with the Mandalorians affects now the future of that history and those people, and what other creative people bring to the table to add to the rich tapestry which now is this unique Star Wars culture. And I wanted it to be like Alien. That I knew I really wanted in this episode was, I wanted it to be like the plaza area in this episode was something that I had wanted to see in Star Wars since I was a kid. I knew it was something George would be okay with if we used it. I wanted Tandivo to be a bit more over the top. With George and I would sit there and I would start drawing in my sketchbook. They described it like a pencil, and I would just draw that. I'm like, okay, well, how big is the ship going to be? George goes, well, it's kind of a small ship. And I was like, you know, well, George, no ship that small has a cloaking device. And George is like, well, this one has a cloaking device. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's fine.
It seems in each case he used tracking torpedoes to hit the ship somehow, whether it was cloaked or not.
And it gave Anakin the opportunity to say, well,
no ship this small usually has a cloaking device.
Thus, the fabric of time and space wasn't torn apart. I know that stuff's important to the fans that really pay attention. Normally, a ship this size wouldn't have a cloaking device. If we just say that, this will all work out and be fine. I needed a way to come up with a language for Embo. My editor, Nick Anastasio, and I intentionally pronounced these French words very poorly. It just so happened that, you know, Nick liked it and Stu, the director, liked it. So, in the end, I am Embo. Suddenly, people were saying, you know, we shouldn't kill him. Then we had to reshoot it, and Embo then was alive. So Embo's out there now. So who knows what Embo's future is going to be, but he's got a cool hat. Maybe Embo likes wolves, too. We'll have to see.
George is the master. He'll pitch out these ideas, these absolute grand visions, and when he does it, you certainly don't have the feeling that he's throwing it out there to see if you can do it. He's basically throwing it out there expecting you to figure out how to do it.
This was one of the most bizarre story meetings I've ever had with George. We go in there to get these ideas, and George was doing a lot of genre pictures in season 2. We had, you know, kind of a Body Snatchers episode, we had Zombies episode, we had the Murder Mysteries, and out of nowhere, he hits me with this, let's face it, it's Godzilla. That, you know, of course they had these things. We've never seen them before, but now we have them just in time to fight a giant monster. They are in Attack of the Clones. They just look a little different, and I've been redesigned to look a little more Godzilla-like for our purpose.
And Dave wanted this artwork for the driver's cab, which, you know, it's like nose art on an aircraft.
It's a little Zilla Beast getting shocked. And everyone's like, why would they have that on there already? I was like, because they had a Sharpie and they drew it on their tank. I was like, come on. What do you think these guys are doing up until... Everybody's so serious all the time. A couple things I put in the episode. You know, we have the Return of the Red Y-Wing, which I like very much. But the pilots' names, I think, are Rod and Goji. And if you look on Goji's helmet, I had a emblazoned painting of this creature with eyes on it, with these weird, like, fungal barbs. That's actually, like, my little mimic of Godzilla. And then Rod has these pteranodons painted on his helmet, and that's Rodan. Also, I've looked really closely for this, but on the chest of the tactical droid that's leading the army, he shows up in like one shot, he has a symbol on him. Go. And that symbol is reminiscent of the oxygen destroyer that actually kills Godzilla in the very first Godzilla movie in 1954. So when looking for clone trooper names, you know, I try to find some very direct names. I wanted Honda's place to feel like they'd been stealing all its military gear as a result of the Clone Wars. It's a big goal of mine to make that place look better. I had Honda's office modeled after my own because it's such a mess. I started speaking with Kevin Kiner about how I wanted to have an Ennio Morricone style sound to the music. Boba Fett. This gets into an area that I really try to stay away from, which is direct influencing of the classic movies.